And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Saturday, August 3rd. This outlook will be for Sunday and Monday. And one thing to denote here, we have kind of two different weather scenarios here across the state of Alaska. Building ridge of high pressure, surface, mid and upper levels is really going to provide VFR conditions and warm temperatures across areas of the south, southeast interior, central, eastern interior, all the way up to the Arctic coast, as well as the panhandle. Many areas seeing temperatures warm into the 70s and even 80s here Sunday into early next week. That southerly flow of warm air coming up over the Brooks Range is going to create an area of IFR conditions Sunday morning there in the vicinity of Adigan and Anatuvik passes. Further to the west, we have southerly flow, warm, moist air coming in off the North Pacific Bering Sea. These areas are going to see rain, occasional rain, and some wind. We have high surf advisories into Sunday afternoon along areas of the southwest coast, Norton Sound, western Seward Peninsula, and areas northwest of Kotzebue to about Point Hope due to these stronger southeast to south winds. And again, episodes of rain this weekend into early next week. Could even be some minor flooding across parts of the Seward Peninsula as you have that southerly flow lifting that warm, moist air and increasing the rainfall rates there over especially some of the higher terrain. And then IFR conditions widespread into the Bering Sea, out along especially the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then extending out through the Aleutians. Sunday afternoon, we're going to see with the influence of this the high pressure ridge running up the eastern Gulf, out here through northwest Canada, up along the Alcan border. Temperatures, Yukon Flats will be getting up into the 80s starting Sunday, and especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week could be dealing with some high density altitude issues. Be careful. Allow extra length there on the runway to get off the ground with those warmer temperatures. To the west, we are looking at IFR conditions, Bering Strait out over St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, Nunavik Island, back into the Aleutians, and also up around areas of east side there of Kodiak Island and portions of the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Monday morning, again, VFR conditions, the Panhandle, Northern Gulf Coast, South Central, Alaska Range, eastern half of the Brooks Range. This area here is going to just see VFR and warm temperatures. In fact, high temperatures along the Arctic coast here will be getting up into the 70s. So very warm air. Meanwhile, coolest temperatures along the west coast with episodes, occasional moderate to even locally heavy rain across portions of the Seward Peninsula. And as we get into Monday afternoon, we see the influence of the ridge that's just going to kind of hold here into the early week. So VFR, dry, warm conditions throughout the Panhandle, 70s, maybe even an isolated 80-degree reading. Could be a few marine layer clouds just off of the outer coast here of the Panhandle, but otherwise, as I said, this interior sunshine and very warm. Some areas will be in the 80s, upper Tanana Valley, and again, Yukon Flats. Meanwhile, IFR conditions will lurk off the west coast with MVFR conditions along the immediate coastline. So pass conditions Sunday, generally IFR conditions becoming MVFR at Anatuvik Pass as well as Adigan Pass as we go through Sunday, later morning and afternoon. For the west arm of the Alaska Range, we could see Lake Clark become MVFR, but generally, once we go from Merrill Pass up through Rainy Pass, Central Alaska Range, Windy Pass, VFR. Same thing further east, Isabel and Mentasta passes, all VFR because of the influence of this strong ridge of high pressure bringing fair skies and much warmer temperatures. Tanita Pass, VFR, Portage Pass, VFR, and then as we go east throughout the Panhandle, we anticipate VFR conditions, especially there at Chilkoot and White on Sunday. Now, freezing levels aloft tell a bit of the story. We have the ridge, the mid and upper level ridge, the warmer dome of air aloft extending from the Gulf up into the mainland. We have freezing levels generally above 10,000 feet south of the Brooks Range, at or above 12,000 feet south of the Alaska Range, upwards around 14,000 feet outer southwest coast of the Panhandle, Haida Gwaii. And then back out here along the Aleutians, freezing levels rise above 14 and even get upwards of 16,000 feet to the south southwest there of the western half of the Aleutian chain. So here is where low pressure, generally the trough of low pressure, resides, and it's just pumping more moist air up along the west coast, which means there could be periods of moderate to locally heavy rain where any type of terrain where you have a southeast-south flow upward glide enhancing that rain production. Generally, the greatest threat for moderate icing is along areas of the northwest west coast, all the way from just west of Utqiagvik, Point Hope, all the way along the west and north side of the Seward Peninsula, out through St. Lawrence and west of the Yukon coastline. Freezing levels aloft, so again, icing above 8,000 feet, above 12,000 feet here, Seward Peninsula, and above 16,000 feet over areas of the southwest, simply because this is a warmer air mass. And looking at the upper level wind pattern, we can kind of infer where the main trough and ridges are. 30,000 feet at jet stream level, we have a circulation, the upper trough here. It's pulling, there's another low and trough to the south of the eastern Aleutians, pulling in moisture that'll come across the Alaska Peninsula up into Kodiak Island. And look at this ridge, light winds, the ridge North Pacific across the Gulf and extending up here along the LCAM border. As we bring things down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, notice this wind flow, this southerly wind flow coming up out of the North Pacific as well as off of the Bering. And it kind of all merges right over the lower Yukon Delta, Seward Peninsula, and up along the northwest portion of the mainland. Winds 50 to as high as 70 knots there in the vicinity of the Seward Peninsula. And then at 3,000 feet, closer to the surface, we have low circulation here over the northwestern portion of the Bering Sea. Another circulation here south of the eastern Aleutians, with a broad southerly flow working its way all the way across the Alaska Peninsula to areas even approaching the entrance of Cook Inlet, but especially strongest winds in excess of 50 knots up here along areas of the lower Yukon coastline, Norton Sound, as well as the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound. So this is why we have some high surf advisories for these areas into Sunday afternoon. And then, of course, with that kind of flow, there's going to be widespread moderate turbulence across much of the western half of the mainland, and including the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, generally surface to 4,000 feet. And there could even be some pockets, especially within this area of Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula, where there could be some isolated severe turbulence as well during the day on Sunday.